And we have here today our distinguished guests. Please welcome Udo Neitzel. He studies comp sci at the University of Bremen and is a network administrator at the Tech Center for Informatics. We have Ralf Bendrath. He's a political scientist and a researcher on private policy at the Collaborative Research Center at the University of Bremen. And we also have Schallaböck, and he is a lawyer and he works at the, sorry if I'm slaughtering your names, guys. He works as a lawyer and works at the Independent Center for Data Protection in Schleswig-Holstein. And they're going to talk about Web 2.0 and privacy, identity, and anonymity in that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Can you hear me? Okay. We want to talk about identity today. There's been quite some buzz in the last few years, growing a bit in parallel with the second dot-com bubble, Web 2.0 bubble. But all this fuss about digital identity management has not really made the big headlines yet, and the critical discussion about it is still largely missing even among the experts. So we want to show you why you should be interested in this, what is coming up here in the very near future, and how this touches upon many aspects of your online life now and in the future. So I'm going to tell you a bit in my part here about the history of identity management from 500 before Christ until 2008. So what's identity in the first place? Well, basically identity is the fact that one thing or one person is the same after some time has passed. While this sounds easy, philosophers from ancient times to today have had a hard time to really think it through with all consequences. Oops, sorry. This guy here already asked, 500 BC, years ago you were a small baby, then you were a boy, then a youth, and now you are a man. Is there any identity of the baby and the man? Is that too complicated for today's IT world? Well, you've all heard about Alice, Bob, and Eve probably, who became famous because some cryptographers wrote about their stories. Alice and Bob had an affair at high school 10 years ago, but then Bob moved to Berlin and they lost contact. Bob is now in love with Eve. So one day Alice comes to Berlin, for a hacker conference maybe, goes out in the evening and sees a guy at the bar. She thinks, wow, this might be my lost high school boyfriend Bob. So if he really turns out to be Bob, is that still the old Bob she used to know 10 years ago and she used to fool around at the movies with? So what happens if they still like each other after these 10 years and Alice ends up drinking with Bob? And what if something happens that night that Bob might regret the next morning? Because, as I said, he's in love with Eve, and Eve, his girlfriend, shouldn't find out about it. This guy here, British philosopher John Locke, already thought about this in his essay concerning human understanding in 1690. He asked, is not a man drunk and sober the same person? Why else is he punished for the fact he commits when drunk, though he be never afterwards conscious of it? And this question actually, if you ask Jan and other lawyers, is still keeping the lawyers busy today. So if we take this to the online world, we can ask, who are you when you go online? Are you still the same person as in the meet space? What if Alice goes to Second Life and meets Bob there? This here is a friend of mine. And this is him in Second Life, or well, his avatar. Are they the same person? Oh, by the way, does anybody know what happens to your avatars in Second Life if you die? So, in Web 1.0, I would say we didn't really ask these questions. Web 1.0 was more or less considered a great document server, like a graphically enhanced version of FTP or something, or Gopher. And matching your real identity to what you did online was not really an issue. Instead, anonymity and pseudonymity were important. And they were cool and opened new options for experimentation. For example, Bob could play Alice's role online and figure out how it is to be a woman. At least partially, of course. And Eve could pretend to be a man in the internet world, in the online world. Or Eve could even pretend to be a dog. Or was Eve played by a dog? This is from '93, for those of you who might not know. So with Web 2.0, this has changed. People seem to have a desire to match their online and offline identities, to link them with others in a certified way, in a trustworthy way. This relates to the title of the whole Congress here, and to tell the world about it. It's not about linking documents anymore, it's about linking persons. And people seem to want to link. Humans are social animals, after all. So this is probably one reason why these networking platforms, MySpace, OpenBC, Friendster, or even the notorious German StudiVerzeichnis are so popular. Of course, some of them create the demand for joining these platforms with a bit of spin doctoring and mean tricks. They make you think that if you don't have friends in one or more of these platforms, something is wrong. So this is my profile here on StudiVerzeichnis. I just went there to see how it works. And this... You don't have any friends. This does not feel right, does it? So, of course, some people have heard that these networks can be used for tracking and stalking and mapping social relations, and some have heard that the NSA is working on it. There are also free software tools for crawling these networks. So therefore, a few of the people have dropped out of Web 2.0 again. But it seems people still use it. Why? What you build in these platforms is not just a social network, or more correct, a technical representation of a social network. It's a reputation and an image of yourself. How does your picture look like? How many friends do you have? What do they write in your guest book? Is your layout cool enough? Stuff like that. You also build a reputation as an Amazon reviewer or an eBay seller or something like that, as a Flickr photographer and so on. So one day Alice thought, maybe on the way to the hacker conference in Berlin, wouldn't it be cool if I could take my hi/.karma and use it for eBay? Or use my eBay reputation for MySpace? Well, she figured out that some of these platforms have APIs that could technically do these kind of things, but there's no real semantic standard for interchanging reputation. And in the end, this is because Alice's reputation on /dot doesn't really say much about her reliability as an eBay seller. I mean, my reputation among the hacker community, for example, cannot convince my banker to give me a higher credit line. So is that a bummer? Well, actually, no. That's what sociologists call functional differentiation. And this is the foundation of complex societies, in fact. One of the founders of sociology, Georg Simmel, already 100 years ago, in his great essay, The Secret in Society, wrote about how important it is that different people know different things about you. Bob's girlfriend Eve knows other things about him than his boss. His banker knows other things than the members of his bowling team. You play different roles in relation to different people. And sometimes it's really important that these roles are not linked to each other. So this is where identity management comes into the picture. There are already a couple of businesses out there for managing your reputation, especially your Web 2.0 reputation, so to speak. Some of them still get it wrong, of course. For example, this company here allows you to establish a nice selection of websites that are related to you and, so to speak, claim them and put them under your name. So this is nice. You want, if you apply for a job, you want your potential future boss or chief of human resources, you want him to see the really cool websites you built, the projects you've worked with, the presentations you gave, but maybe you don't want him to see your MySpace profile, you know? So it sounds very nice, but then what they do with my information is they put it under a Creative Commons license. They say that you may do what you want to do with your identity information, but in fact this license allows everybody to do what they want to do with my personal information, even remix it. So no, folks, works of art are different from personal data, I'm sorry. But there are, of course, more sophisticated reputation management services, like this one here. They use search engines and lawyers mainly. They scan the web and let you know what is online about you, and if you find something you don't like, you really don't want to be online, you can pay them to hire a lawyer to make it go offline. So the night Bob went out and got drunk with Alice in the bar, you remember, he would certainly not like to have someone take pictures of them, maybe even kissing at the bar, whatever, and posting these pictures on Flickr and even tagging the pictures with Bob's name. I mean, what if Eve found out about it? So, in Web 2.0, there's a whole cottage industry now developing so-called grassroots identity solutions. One approach is to use microformats. It's a tweaked use of HTML tags. I guess most of you know it. H-card, for example, is probably pretty well known. A machine-readable business card based on the V-card format, widely used for email signatures and so on. It's integrated into HTML using the class attribute, and Bob's V-card, for example, could look like this. You have Bob's company, phone number, email, URL, and so on. So this is basically a great help for whom? For the spam bots, of course. I mean, now they can not only harvest Bob's email address, but they also know what name, what phone number, what company, and what URL belong to it. Some other microformat ID protocols are trying to emulate these linking functions of social networking sites. XFN, for example, uses the rel tag in HTML. So if Eve wants to link to her boyfriend Bob, she can put this link here on her website. So now everybody can see that Bob is Eve's friend, that they have met physically, and that Bob is actually Eve's sweetheart. Okay, I mean, at least I would hope that she asks Bob before she does this, but anyway. But now what if Alice puts up, after the nice evening at the bar with Bob, if Alice puts up this link on her website? I certainly wouldn't want to be in Bob's position here, especially if you know that there are already search engines for XFN. Another example of grassroots IDs is microID. It's basically your email address hashed with your domain name, your website's URL. And you can use your microID, for example, already to log into Delicious, Last.fm, or the above-mentioned Claim ID and other services. But all of these are basically easy to spoof, certainly not secure, and not really trustworthy in any way. But somehow people still use them, I don't know. So a bit more sophisticated approaches use trusted third parties as identity providers. They combine this with some kind of single sign-on mechanism, which allows one person to identify to several services at once and with the same, so to speak, ID token. Normally they use methods similar to URLs as identifiers. iNames, for example, is such a project based on the extensible resource identifiers developed by the Oasis group. So you can register your iName with a network of iBrokers, a bit like you register your domain name with DNS registrars. So why would you do this? And I mean, they charge you for that. Well, they say it can help you prevent spam, because people only can contact you through this iName if they contact you through the third party, through the iBroker. Sounds nice? Well, you get rid of the spam bots, but in exchange you have to rely on trusted third parties as an identity provider for each transaction you do. Do you want this? Who do you trust? What is the trusted third party? There are quite a few similar protocols and approaches out there now. Oops. So, confusing? Yes. But there are even more players here. As I said before, role management is an important part of ID management. So corporate identity management systems have done this for quite a while. They use role modeling or provisioning for differentiating the several tasks their employees can take. Who can enter the premises, who has access to which database, who can authorize, buy and sell orders for which amount of money. This is where the big players come from. They call it provisioning, identity federation, or workflow auditing. In the end, of course, it's about controlling employees. And this is one of the most fundamental functions of ID management, control. The big players are now also trying to roll these kind of services out for the web, outside of the closed corporate networks. Here, kind of ID management from the corporate world is merging with ID management from the grassroots or customer perspective. So Yahoo has already a service out there, it's called BBAuth, browser-based authentication. Google is doing it with Google accounts. Microsoft tried it a few years ago with Passport and failed big time. They are now coming back, and Udo will tell you a bit more about that later. And because of all these different approaches, some standards organizations have now started to set up working groups on ID management, just this year basically. So you can expect some interesting standard wars here in the future, in the very near future, I would say. Who was the first to establish identity management and ID systems? The early modern European state. In the 15th century, the first laws were enacted that made it illegal to change your name during your life course. So in order to make sure that to others that you are the person whose name you pretend to have, you need some extra proof normally. You don't have your name tattooed on your forehead. So normally this takes the form of identity tokens. First, there used to be official letters or seals, and in the last 100 years roughly, we saw the development and spread of passports and ID cards. Oops, sorry. So with the emergence of computers, names were basically replaced with numbers. Social security numbers, tax numbers, passport numbers, and so on. But this idea also is actually much older. You might know Jeremy Bentham, who invented the idea of the panopticon. And he actually had the idea, I think about 200 years ago, that every citizen should have a serial number tattooed on his arms. Well, the problem today is Web 2.0, online world. If you go online, your tattoo is not transmitted to the internet. So some governments now want to establish a certified official link between your real physical identity and your online identity. So the problem is this, of course, holds some potential for large-scale surveillance and control of online behavior. And a lot of people don't like this idea, especially in countries without a tradition of ID cards, the UK, the United States, and so on. So there's quite some resistance. So what do you do as a security politician if you want to establish such a system? You start with groups like foreigners or criminals. Two US senators at the moment are working on a draft bill they plan to introduce into the Senate in January, which would force all convicted sexual offenders to register all their email accounts and all other online identities with the authorities. And they're dead serious about this. If you fail to register, you will face up to 10 years of imprisonment. This is not for raping somebody, it's just for forgetting to tell the government your every email address you ever have used. I mean, can you remember all the logins you ever created? I can't. So they do it with convicted sexual offenders. In Germany, we're of course much more advanced in terms of bureaucracy. This program here, issued by the German Minister for the Interior in September, has a very interesting chapter on electronic ID cards and e-identity. They plan to issue an electronic ID card starting in 2008, which will enable people to authenticate themselves online with their government-certified, government-issued ID. So in Germany, registration of your online identity with the authorities is not a for criminals only thing anymore. It will apply to the whole population. In the end, we might end up with the government as the ultimate trusted third party and get a perfect ID management system that encompasses everybody. The question then, of course, is how much do you trust your government? How are they planning to build the infrastructure for this? Well, of course, they work together with the private sector and some big IT corporations. And with this, I turn over to Udo.
Okay, thank you, Ralf, for introducing the philosophy of identity and the people who are interested in identity management. We saw government and we saw the police or something who wants to give my accounts to them in order to control me. And what is missing is a really technical backend for this purpose, to ensure my identity is real and there are some credentials like my name or my address or my credit card number in order to represent my identity. Today, today you usually have several accounts with the ID, your username, and you ensure you are yourself within password. This happens by a web form, and in the back end there are mechanisms, databases, let's say Kerberos or LDAP database directories for storing the information and the credentials. But this happens at every site again. So it's no problem. You can lie or you can have different identities at every site. It's just a local identity. Yeah? It's difficult to track them and to bring them together because you can fake every data at least. To make this secure, they use certificates like X.509 to make sure no one is able to see the transferred data, your username and your password. So that's the state of the art or the status quo. Today we have a secured transmission of username and password. That's not enough. As Ralf said, I cannot remember every site I visited and I have an account for without storing it in a file and writing down my passwords and so on. Then Ralf mentioned some big players like Sun or Oracle, but I think there is someone missing named Microsoft. And they had the idea to collect your sign-in data with a system called Passport. They had a big server, and stored your username and your credentials in this database. Visiting a site, you have been able to select your account, your MSDN account or something like this, and they try to prove that you are yourself and you are the same person who visited the site the last time. They shipped it with an API embedded in .NET in 1999, but it was a really centralized service. All your identities, all your data was stored on the server, and they can have been able to connect your visits to different sites. They could say you logged into GMX or whatever, and you visited these sites. That's a problem. I don't want anyone to track my visits and to track my visits on the internet. I want to be able to control who knows who I am, and I want to see who knows who I am. Yeah, please. So some people started to think how to improve a system like Passport, and one of these guys is Kim Cameron, who wrote down the 7 laws of identity management. He says, today we have a patchwork of identity one-offs. This means every site has its own mechanism and their own directory and their own database. There are no security standards, and the user has a new experience on every site he visits. Amazon does look completely different than eBay. And he thinks these techniques cannot withhold with the challenges for companies and for governments today, because there is no centralized mechanism nor a defined mechanism for logins. So the 7 laws. These are some of the 7 laws. There will be a talk, a talk by Casper Bowden from Microsoft in this evening, I think 10 p.m. in Saal 2, 9 o'clock p.m. He will tell you in more detail, I hope, yeah. But I try to use these 4 laws to give you a clue what it's about. The first is user control and consent. A system like Passport or a system I would perhaps trust to collect my identifying data must be controlled by me. I want to see whom do I give my data and what does he with this data, and I must consent with this. So they cannot make or force me to give my data, but I want to make a decision. Do I really want to give out this data? The second part is there are different sites. Perhaps I just want to post in a forum or in a forum any opinion. I'm not really. I don't want everyone to save it for 10 years and to say that was your opinion. I want identities which are anonymous, and I want some parties to get just anonymous data, and some parties I want to give them my credit card number. Yeah? And I want to select every time I visit a site which entities do I really want to give this site, this party. In order to select which data to give them, I have to justify about them. I must know, is this really the site they say they are? Is this really eBay? Is this really Amazon? Is there someone spoofing? Or I even want to know what do they do with the data they collect? Yeah? Do they sell them, or what policy do they have? So all parties must to be justifiable. Yeah? But what happens if there are some companies selling data and you really have to use them? Perhaps because it's one of the 10 upcoming email providers. Or what happens if the system has an cryptographic algorithm which is cracked or which is weak? You must have the opportunity to exchange parts of this system. I want to select my companies I trust, and I want to select the techniques that I trust. A system which meets these ideas, Microsoft calls a meta system. A meta system because it's not defined with every algorithm and every stakeholders, but it's a system which is flexible and exchangeable in parts. So it's not a Microsoft product, but it's a meta system. So if you read the InfoCard meta system I mentioned, or the identity management meta system, we talk about building blocks of cryptography and sites and so on. Windows Vista is coming up now. I think it's being shipped in US already, and in January in Germany. There is a system, such a meta system called InfoCard as code name, and now Cardspace called in the product itself. This is an identity management system which tries to keep the user from being spoofed and being a victim of phishing and something like this. And they try to do this by presenting the user a set of cards, like cards in your wallet. Yeah? The user should understand that these cards have a certain value. Yeah? A card with my credit card number in it has really a value. I have to care for it, and I have to watch all the parties who get these cards. What does such a card look like? You see here, this is a self-issued card I created myself with the fake name Alice. There is, I explain the term identity provider later. One of the trusted parties is your PC itself. So you can actually create anonymous cards with a restricted set of information, like my name, my birthday, or something like this, and no really important credentials like credit card number or Personalausweisnummer. Such a card at least just contains claims. So the card itself does not contain any data, please, but just references. For example, the claim name. With this card, I want to claim the values for my name. And I even say where you can get this data. This is my identity provider number 1. You see it in the URL tag. So if I give this card away, someone is able to ask an identity provider for this data. It is not stored locally, but decentralized somewhere on the net. Another point, I think you all know, if you visit a site secured by HTTPS, and the site has its own CA or uses CA certificates, which are not in the list of trusted root CAs in your Firefox. You have to decide if you accept this site or the certificate anyway. And phishing happens by telling the user, okay, our certificate has changed, now please accept the new one, and every user clicks yes. So Microsoft tries to solve this problem by presenting just a picture. Yeah? They shall not control a fingerprint, but a nice picture, like overdue media. But no, I keep this. But what happens if I'm a spammer or a phisher, and I just change 1 pixel of this overdue media into dark green? It's a different picture, but it looks like the old one, like the original one. And the site is certified by VeriSign. But what if I have the domain slash sign? Yeah? The user doesn't really understand what's happening in cryptography. He didn't by fingerprints, and I think he will not know by any logos or bitmaps. So to make this clear again, we have justifiable parties, and we want the site to prove that they are trusted, and the site wants us to be trusted. That's a problem. So does InfoCard try to solve the login process? First, there is the user. The user wants to log in to a relying party. Can you switch? Okay. To a relying party. The relying party is perhaps Amazon or your email service. The user now sends the request. The relying party says, okay, I want to know about you, what's your name, and what's your credit card number, and are you really over 21 years old? The relying party does this with, you see on the left, with get security token requirements. Yeah? They say, we need the following data about you. Now, the user can select one of his cards fitting these requirements. For example, he selects a card with his credit card number. Please remember, the data is not stored in the InfoCard itself, but by a third party. This is the trusted third party, the identity provider. The identity provider now encrypts your data and sends it back to you and to your Cardspace system. Point 2, get security token, and then the security token is sent to the user. Now the user can send it to the relying party, and the relying party encrypts it and sees, okay, it's certified by VeriSign, and I believe the user is really the user who he claims to be. Yeah, you see, there are security tokens. There are some important questions. Do we want the identity provider to know which site I am visiting? I think not. It's not important. I just want to have a relationship to my relying party, but not to a third party like the identity provider. He could collect data about which sites you visited, at which time, and did you use a credit card info card or just an anonymous card. That's interesting data about you. And I think he must not know this. Is this possible in InfoCard, to hide your real intention to the identity provider? Yeah, the security token keeps certificates and signed data. Okay, I mentioned already. But the question is, for whom is this data encrypted? Is it for the user? So does the identity provider send the encrypted data to the user? The user can decide what to do with this data and send it to the relying party? Or is the security token a little black box, a little black token the identity provider can create, and only the relying party, so like Amazon, can look into it again? Yeah? Is this really the data I allowed them to change, or is it something totally different? So there are two modes, one called the auditing mode and one called the non-auditing mode. In non-auditing mode, the identity provider really encrypts for the user. So the user gets a security token, can enroll it, see what data is sent, and can decide, okay, I send it to my eBay site or not. The second variant is the auditing identity provider, and he really takes the public key of the relying party, encrypts it for it, and only the relying party again can decrypt it. So it's a black token. Yeah? I don't know what's happening there. And I think that's one of the big stumbling stones in InfoCard. It's not a bad system, but as you can see here, if every site uses the auditing mode, there is no sense for the whole meta system because it's a backdoor. Okay, that's again. Yeah, it's a nice idea, but in auditing mode, it's useless. For you as a privacy-interested user, it's useless. Okay, again, what's the idea behind InfoCard? The idea is to prevent the user from making mistakes by presenting him pictures for his cards instead of lists of data, and present him logos instead of fingerprints of certificates, storing the data in a system of the Microsoft kernel. That's the idea. The user makes mistakes, the user does not know about cryptography, and so we have to present a system which helps the user not to make mistakes. That's one method, but I think there must be another way. Perhaps we have to take a look to the server side. I think Jan will talk about this. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Udo. While I'm trying to set this up, I think I will try to speed up my presentation a little bit, so there will be some time left in the end to do to do some discussion, but I can't promise right now because this doesn't really seem to be possible. So I work on a project called Prime, which is a EU-funded project on identity management, and it's specifically focused on privacy-enhanced identity management. And we're trying to work on the implementation side of the privacy-enhanced identity system. Well, actually, I'm not working on the implementation. I'm a lawyer. I can't do code. But I too do evaluation, and I look at the legal aspects of it. So if you look at implementation, you have to also focus on the backends of the whole system. You have to take an integrated approach, because if you only look at the front ends, you will only tackle the problems the user have. But in a lot of cases, the problem, or the most important problem, is that after the user has released a certain amount of data, it is not possible for the user to get it back into control. Just as a short disclaimer, what we're doing right now is just a proof of concept. It's not ready to take home. I don't have the boxes with me, and I'm not doing a business presentation here. I'm just trying to show some concepts that could maybe add on or that are slightly different from what other identity management systems do. But let's get back to the basic principles. Let's look first at what Kim Cameron said in the presentation Udo just did. He says minimal disclosure for constrained use is one of the very basic principles. Well, if you look at what the German Bundesdatenschutzgesetz, the German Federal Privacy Protection Act, reads, you will see that implementation and choice of systems have to aim at collecting, processing, and using as little data as possible. Does that look familiar to anybody if you look at this? Well, it's the same thing. It's the law in Germany for about 10 years now. Thank you for noticing, Microsoft. Wait, let me take that back. I don't want to do any Microsoft bashing today because, not because I'm particularly fond of their operating systems, but looking from what they came from, it's quite good what people like Caspar Bowden and Kim Cameron and Jerry Fisher-Dick are doing within Microsoft right now. Because the principle of data minimization I just tackled is not something that is generally agreed on. You can find it in German data protection laws. You can find it. You can find some proof of it within European legislation, but there is no such principle on OECD level, nor in the US. It's not generally agreed on, and it's quite progressive actually. But if you want to tackle data minimization on a technical level, if you really want to implement it, you have to put it that way. It's not implement, it's maximum privacy. If you want to have a data minimization, you have to start with maximum privacy. I'll show you quickly why. Because we have these little yummies. Anybody know? Probably all the people know these cookies. Then we have these little numbers that eventually lead to troubles like that and leave the user without. Well, that's Eve actually. She's taking revenge right now. That leaves the user without control on their data. So that is because we have these guys that do this stuff and eventually do this stuff, and that maybe leads to this stuff. But more interestingly, they also do this stuff, which shows, actually, I don't want to do Google bashing either. Because, I mean, this could be any email provider, right? But you have, it really shows nicely that actually all these private entities have quite extraordinary access to personal data here. Well, they do not only this, they do also this. Oh, this is Joy Ito's schedule. Anybody interested in what Joy Ito's schedule is for the next couple of days? But the more interesting part here is probably still this. because that's really personal data, what you are looking at on the internet. So coming back, there is no effective data protection without an anonymization layer beneath. But let's go back to Eve again. As we already know, Alice has a crush on Bob, and they had something together. And let's say Eve wants to surprise Bob with a bottle of champagne to get things going again or whatever. I'll have to rush on this a little bit because we're running out of time. This is a little bit more the complicated concepts of what we're doing. But basically, she will be visiting the website. She will usually be able to look at some privacy disclaimer that will tell her that her data is perfectly safe, that we're not doing anything bad with it. We're collecting IP addresses, and that has nothing to do with you whatsoever, and she'll be fine. Well, there's lots of problems, lots of other problems when you go online shopping. You could go through that step by step, but if we look at the privacy policy we just saw, we usually tackle this first problem, and that is some of the problem that Vista also tackles, the principle or the concept of informed consent. Because if you want to know what happens to your data, you're probably not going to read through all this shit. You probably need something more easy to start with. I mean, even if you would really read through this, you'd probably not understand it. I mean, I studied this, I don't understand it, so... You will probably start with something like that. That's developed by the Article 29 Data Protection Commissioners. In Europe, it's the concept of layered policies. Actually, there is another guy who invented this a couple of years before that. I think he should be, I don't know if he's in the room, but he should be here in the next couple of days, because this invention actually has a lot to do with what Larry Lessig does with Creative Commons licenses. We call this layered license approach, so you have different layers. You have a machine readable, you have a human readable, lawyer's readable layer, maybe you have even an iconography. Well, let's go back to Eve for a second. If Eve doesn't want excessive data release, what could she do? If she doesn't want to trust the provider, what could she do? She has very little choice. If she wants to go buy a wine, she could avoid online shopping. Which actually would be a good idea, because she could taste the wine before, and that would be probably a lot better than shopping online. But maybe that's beyond the scope of this presentation today. Even if the winery respects Eve's privacy, how could they prove by any means what they are doing is the correct way? Well, this is usually tackled with a concept called trusted third parties. They're putting up blacklists or seals. Actually, that's some of the stuff we're doing in Schleswig-Holstein with the privacy commissioner. We're looking into companies, looking at what they're doing, and eventually they will get a seal which states we have looked at them and we're saying they have quite good level of privacy protection. But there is another thing, and another important principle. That's the principle of purpose binding. And I want to tackle this really quick in the end and maybe scare you off a little bit here. This is, I think, one of the most important principles, because that's the idea that when you release personal data, you release it only for a certain purpose. And it's not to be used beyond that purpose. The problem only is if you once you release the data, you're, as we just said, usually not in control. It's one way we go towards this is to go with sticky policy. So we release the data and we release the policy with it. So we have the different kinds of layers, and we also have a machine-readable policy with it that eventually gives us another possibility. It's very important to notice what Ralf already said. Private data is not a work of art. The concept and the principles that go with works of art don't work in the field of private data. So all the stuff that we really like free software, free speech, the idea of sharing, remixing, and so doesn't work in this field. You really don't want a free flow of personal information. So coming back to this principle number 3, you go have the principle of purpose binding, and you try to enforce that. And now, just to finish these things, if you want to enforce policies, how would you do that? How do others do that? Any ideas? Well, it's usually called digital restrictions management. And what I want to finish and sum up with today is maybe the concept of DRM is not very usable in the field of works of art, but it might be in the field of personal data. Thank you.
So, you might have noticed we are a political scientist, a lawyer, and a computer scientist here. And we had a hard time. We've been working on this for the last 2 months. We had a hard time to come together from our different perspectives. So we thought each of us is doing a very quick one-sentence summary, conclusion at the end from his specific perspective. So from my perspective as a social scientist, I think I can just quote Lawrence Lessig. A system of perfect identity is a system of perfect control.
Yes, and perhaps it's the first time with Microsoft InfoCard that there is an infrastructure to really implement this. Yeah, it's the first time there are signed identities, and perhaps this could be the technique which makes it possible to control. Because it's widely spread. And I think we have to watch it and to care for the development of InfoCard, watch it, what policies are used, and how do the users use InfoCard.
Well, as Frank Rieger pointed out last year, we've lost the war. Maybe we already have a system of perfect control, but it's totally intransparent right now. We don't know who is handling our data, who's manipulating ourselves. So I'm not really decided on whether this approach that the thing is heading right now is a good way, but at least it gives us the chance to maybe claim back the identity data and say, well, look at it from a more political viewpoint and say what principles do we actually enforce in this domain. But maybe we can have another 5 minutes left, I think, to give the discussion a little bit to the floor. Is there any questions or comments on this? There. I think there should be a second mic up here. No, it's gone. Over there.
I was missing one aspect in the first part. The short question, why should they, so to say, they want to know my identity? The idea behind it is that they can foresee from my identity what I will do in the future. This is a very simple, basic conception. And we can ask ourselves, is it true? I mean, can we foresee what someone does in the future from what he does until now? And I think that's not the case. Very simple. So this basic conception of all these state surveillance ideas and all that's behind is a misconception. I think this is something from the social scientist or philosophic point of view that is very simple. And I would like to add it to your speech. Thank you.
Any others?
Yeah. I'm sharing all the concern you raised during your presentation, but I still want to raise one of the important aspects of identity management, which is digital signature. Okay, we have a lot of concern with identity management in terms of privacy, but digital signature can give back power to citizens. If we can have direct democracy like in Switzerland, where I come from, and we can sign up online petition with a legal existence behind that, we can go against lobby, we can go against politicians which are not representative anymore of ourselves. So is a way, where is a way to balance between all the concern you raise and the need of getting back the power to the citizens? Thank you very much.
In order to do online petition, it's not really, you must not be identified by the state or something. If you write down on the street a petition, yeah, you just say, my name is Udo Neitzel and I'm against this act or something. I don't have to present my identity card or something like this. And so, of course, HTTPS and certificates are not the problem, but the whole framework it is used for.
Yeah, the problem with digital signatures is it's nice to make sure that you are actually the person who wrote this email or signed this petition, but on the other hand, at the same time, it enables others to identify you. More questions? Yeah. Oh, is this Vittorio?
Hi, thank you. Hi, Ralf. I was just wondering whether maybe you could beat the enemy with their own weapons. So is there any way that the community can design a sort of privacy-friendly and standards-based identity management system that can really empower the user rather than the people who receive the data? So wouldn't it be better to actually deploy it for the good uses it will have and prevent the bad uses in its deployment and implementation? Thank you.
Yeah, just a very short answer. Most of the people who have been coming from the grassroots movement, open source movement and so on, Web 2.0 blogger community who have worked on this have not really thought about privacy and anonymity and so on. They more come from this share everything attitude. So this whole development of ID management really needs people to think through the privacy implications, to think about how to do it with data minimization, how to do it anonymously or pseudonymously, and then build these systems, of course. So that's up to you. I think we got to go.
Yeah, okay.
Other speakers are coming up. Or maybe one more question. I don't know.
I just wanted to refer, you were talking about Web 2.0 in the beginning, and I think for us it's very important, all you were talking about, the privacy. But on the other hand, like in the whole Web 2.0 development, people tend to show them everything they got. They show much more than what address, city, but all the Eve, Bob, Alice thing. Like they at MySpace, they show everything. And what do you think on this development?
I think they are just stupid.
I don't think so. No.
Somehow there's people have a need to do it somehow. Also, this Sputnik thing. Why do I buy it and why do I put it on me? I mean, everybody's against it. Yeah, it's cool and it's technology and it shows me.
It's actually it's really hard to tackle this on the way of how do we handle this in ways of principles. But I think one important principle, and that's not really obeyed in a lot of cases, should be that you can give away your personal data. You can't restrict people from doing that, even if something that is really stupid. But they should be protected in the way that it must be possible for them to distinguish who took insight into their personal information. And this should not be feed. For example, if you go to Xing, which was formerly called Twix or OpenBC, I forgot, you always have the sign saying so and so many looked at your personal profile, and then you have to buy a professional membership for a couple of bucks to see who actually watched this profile. I think that's the right approach. You have to make the people see who watch their profiles, but this shouldn't be feed. But I think we got to be closing to now. Thank you for your attention, and bye.